Hello everyone, Pancakes here, and we've got some more Advanced Warfare gameplay. Now, in the previous video I gave you guys some of my first impressions. I talked a little bit about the lag and the spawn issues, and I talked a little bit about the things that I liked about this game, such as how it's fast-paced and how, while it may be very frustrating for me at times, it isn't usually what I would consider to be straight-up boring. There are some kind of boring matches where people just camp in corners, and it does happen in this game, sadly. But, certainly there aren't usually a lot of situations where you're running around for like 5 minutes trying to find an enemy. There's always something going on in this game. Maybe almost too much going on, but at the very least it's not boring, and that does count for a lot. Now, I mentioned in the last video that there were some lag issues in this game. Sledgehammer, since that video, has put a patch out that is supposed to address the lag issues and the matchmaking issues that people were having. Now, did it actually do anything? I'm not entirely sure. I have noticed some improvement, but it could just be a placebo effect. I would have to wait and see, wait a little bit longer and get a little bit more experience. But it does seem like it has helped a little bit. But certainly you still get random BS kill cams and laggy lobbies, and so there's still work to be done. I'm still kind of bummed out that they didn't include dedicated servers, especially when they advertised that they would. That actually kind of irks me a little bit, that they would advertise dedicated servers and then not include them in the final product. That, again, I'm not gonna lie, that does kind of upset me a little bit, but at the very least they could, you know, do like what Modern Warfare 2 did. Modern Warfare 2 had a host-based system, but Modern Warfare 2's netcode was actually quite good, despite whatever faults you may have thought the game had. It had very good netcode, and I didn't have too many instances in Modern Warfare 2 where I was just getting angry at the kill cams because they didn't make any sense, right? So that is one thing that I think could still use a little bit more work, is with the connections, and I think one thing that's got to go is skill-based matchmaking. I'm not saying that because I just want to beat up on noobs all day. It is fun to do that, but that's not the main reason why I want skill-based matchmaking gone. It's because it makes skill the highest priority in matchmaking over connection. You've heard this argument before, I'm sure. But it's a true argument. And notice that with Black Ops 2, when they took skill-based matchmaking off of the game, connections got better. Almost all around the board. It's undeniable. It is something that I think should be done. And it will probably be done. But I think that's the next step when it comes to connections. But I said in the last video that I was going to go ahead and talk more about different things, different strategies that I find helpful in this game, because it's a tough game. My kill-to-death ratio in this game is lower than it was in previous games, and it's that way for just about everybody I know and everybody I play with. Notice on YouTube now, you don't see a whole lot of 40-1 games anymore. You see a lot of 18-3, 20-2, 30-5 kind of games, but you don't really see a whole lot of 40-1 games anymore, because those games are really hard to get now. With skill-based matchmaking, with the spawn system, with all of the craziness that goes on in this game, the fact that the score streaks in this game are just not very good, it's hard to get those really high kill-to-death ratio games, so you've got to kind of tailor back your expectations a little bit. But how do you do well consistently in this game? Because there are a lot of people that struggle to just go positive in this game, people who may have been actually pretty good at previous Call of Duties. Well, I think the first thing to understand is that a lot of the strategies that worked in previous CODs still work in this game. Now, you may have to play a little bit differently. Now you have to start looking up at rooftops, because there are people who like to camp up there now than before. But defensive play, patrolling the outsides of the map, that's still a very effective game. I would argue that it's even more effective in this game, because with the small maps and the crazy hectic spawns that flip every 3 seconds, you almost have to play, like, for example, I play mostly TDM in this game. You have to almost play TDM like it's free-for-all, because if you don't, you're going to have people spawning behind you, and then you can take them all out, and either they'll spawn around you again, or, you know, the spawns will flip, and then they'll flip back onto you. It's crazy. It's so unpredictable. And certainly, playing this match almost like it's a free-for-all when you're playing TDM mitigates a lot of that. It makes it so much easier. I can't even tell you. When it comes to something like Domination, it's a little bit easier, because with Domination, at the very least, the spawns are more predictable. You know, if you've got 2 flags, you can reasonably assume they're going to just spawn at the other flag. And it's a lot more easy to navigate the maps in that way. But certainly with something like TDM or Kill Confirmed, where the spawns are flipping constantly, playing the game almost like it's a free-for-all, I found to be very helpful. Now, the next thing I'd recommend is I don't want to recommend the Bal 27 because it's a gun that everybody's already using, and I would honestly love for that gun to just be nerfed across the board. But sadly, in its current state, it is the best gun in the game by a lot. And with skill-based matchmaking, it's hard to, just pull out the AMR9 and go to town on people because, if you're playing against people who are pretty good, if you've got good stats, you're going to be playing against mostly people with Bal 27. That's what I've noticed. In the lobbies that I play in, I literally find maybe 8 out of 10 people using the Bal 27. And very rarely do you find somebody using the Armali or a different gun. It's, by and large, the most popular and most overused gun in the game. And it needs to be nerfed. The stats on the Bal 27, it's got a high fire rate, it does a lot of damage, it has almost no recoil, the damage drop off at range is fairly negligible. It's a godlike weapon. And I hope it's nerfed, but in its current state, it is like the gun everybody's using, and if you don't use it, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. You just are. I'm just saying. Like, I've tried all kinds of different guns, and honestly, it's just, you feel like you just feel so weak. You feel like you're shooting marshmallows at people when they're using the Bal 27. It's kind of frustrating. It gets a little bit boring, I'm not going to lie. But if you're finding that you're struggling, use the Bal 27, you might find it's a little bit easier. In terms of perks, now the perk setup that I use, it varies actually a little bit. I'm actually experimenting quite a bit with the perks, because similar to Black Ops 2 where you have sort of your pick 13 options there, there's a lot of different combinations that you can go with. It's hard to really know which one's best. But I find that low profile is definitely a staple. That perk is a lifesaver, because in this game, if you show up on UAV, ooh, good luck, right? Cold-Blooded is a pretty solid perk that I use sometimes from that second perk slot. Peripherals is okay. It's not bad, but I think Cold-Blooded's better. And for the third perk slot, Scavenger is very good if you go on long score streaks like I do. You can't pick ammo up off of the ground anymore, which is kind of weird. So you have to use Scavenger now if you want to replenish your ammunition. And the other third perk that I would recommend is either Blast Suppressor or Toughness. Both of these two perks are very good. I use them both, and you can't really go wrong with either of them. In terms of weapons and attachments, I typically use foregrip and quick draw on pretty much all the guns that I use. And the third attachment varies. I sometimes use the suppressor if I want to go stealth. I sometimes use the red dot sight. Sometimes I go with stock, and sometimes I go with extended magazine. If I'm using an SMG, I might go with laser sight. These are all pretty solid attachments on your primary. I don't typically use a secondary. I don't use any of the EXO abilities because they're all kind of lackluster, and I don't really use the grenade much because the grenade in this game is kind of bad. So I usually go with just the weapon, the perks, and then I go with the score streaks. Score streak setup, it kind of depends. For me, at first, I couldn't go on a score streak to save my life, so I pretty much just went with support UAV. I might maybe support care package and maybe support sentry gun. Or I might throw on the Warbird or Paladin just to go crazy, but I rarely got it when I first started playing this game. But once you start to learn the flow of the game, how you can kind of stay alive a little bit better, then you can kind of branch out. I would say for me, the score streak setup that gets me the most kills is probably UAV with the perk that kind of paints enemies through walls. Sometimes I go with Bombing Run with dual bombers, which is quite good. Sometimes, usually I go with Warbird with Aggressor, which acts like the Pavlo from Modern Warfare 2. It's actually quite good. And the Paladin with extra time is pretty good. Just make sure you lead your shots like the AC-130, and you can get a lot of kills with that. But that's a general score streak setup that I would use. But in closing, I would say my initial strategy with this game is to not go too crazy with the EXO movements and just run around like a chicken with its head cut off, because while you have all these awesome new movement abilities, you still don't want to get too crazy because you're just going to get shot from the back a lot. That doesn't change from previous Call of Duties. In fact, it's even more prevalent. So I would say, take your time, navigate around the outsides of the map, maybe patrol a little bit if you're playing TDM like it's free-for-all, and maybe you'll see your scores get better. But if anything, just play it more, stick with it. You'll start to get a feel for the EXO movements. You'll start to get a feel for the flow of the maps, and you'll start to see your scores get better. But with all that said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time.